as well. So we got it all going. All right, this is all good. So I'll how we do this is usually they're side by side on some of these recordings. We'll see how it all works out. I'll just introduce you, and it really is this banter. I'll bring in some video. You may mention something and then send me a slide, or we show a little video of stuff, or if you've got stuff, you can send me a bit later of a meter. Whatever comes up, we just go with it and enjoy and have fun. That's basically it. And we're all about the solutions, really. It's about the solutions. It is about how can I heal? That's basically it. All right? Good.
Okay.
Let's go for it. Welcome, everybody. It's the How Can I Heal podcast with me, Richard Flook, and I have a special guest here called Cyril. How do you pronounce your second name? I've never got that right. And we've had some good tension over that in the last, like Flook or Flook, or is it Bork or Burke, or how do you pronounce it?
It's Burke. It's Burke, like Outback Beyond Burke. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Then we'll start again. Good. Let's start.
We've known each other how long? What, 15?
Oh, yeah, 50 years. Yeah, but I mean, people still call me Fluky and Flook, and I get that wrong all the time. And and I don't care. But anyway, hi, welcome. It's Richard Flook and the How Can I Heal podcast, and we are going to be talking about electromagnetic fields with my great friend. We've known each other for a long, long, long time, called Cyril Burke, and he is well, I met him through something called water, basically NES Health, but then we had an interesting journey. I think it was 2017, 2018. Again, if you look at the previous podcast with Chris Henderson, we were doing something incredible with at that time, and then Cyril said, "Look, I'm going into another field." It's looking at electromagnetics, and from there, I mean, this was how many years ago now? 6 years ago, wasn't it, that you started on that journey? Is that about right?
Well, sort of, but not quite. I actually started my adventures in radio communications in 1983.
Right. Didn't know that.
So 1983, I was actually the youngest in the UK. I was the youngest person to achieve a full amateur radio license. So I had a full Morse and full amateur radio license, basically. I got a letter from the Home Office acknowledging that I was the youngest person to be issued with one at the time. And that started my interest in communications. So I did engineering with IBM, and I went into the military with the British military. Spent time with the Special Air Service and telecommunications, ended up going to the Hong Kong government, and went into the oil and gas industry, went into the healthcare industry, and then by tying all my understanding of biology and science, I then went back into the engineering world, back into radio communications, and starting to monitor and test and shield people's homes, but bringing with me the understanding of what was about 8 years in the medical world, specializing in biofeedback and energy and informational medicine. So understanding how the electrical fields of the body actually do function, and how they control what we see as chemistry, and how that was being impacted on a daily basis, basically, with electric fields. And that, so yeah, my whole career has been actually from radio all the way through all these technologies and literally the health industry, and then back into electronics and dealing with these things again. So yeah, I've collected a huge amount of information and understanding, and those experiences that you and I had looking at information within water and structures, and how Peter Fraser's work that we both absolutely admired and worked with, how that type of information was real, how it really had patterns that you could repeat and monitor and use to heal the body. Well, that was
absolutely
tiny.
Yeah. And
tiny energies. And what did we find? Well, we're now in a world where those energies are being overridden. And it's the basis of all your work, really, is those information patterns, working through emotions and dealing with it there.
And you know, if people aren't aware, in the book "How Can I Heal," where there's 5 steps. The first one is clear the underlying trauma. Second one is get rid of the toxicity. So in the book, I talk about toxic relationships, but there's this external bit, which is this toxic side, and which, you know, Cyril's just this is huge, this particular bit, and it's in the chapter 11, why clean up your toxic environment, and where I talk about electromagnetic fields and talk about Cyril in there. And you know, I think the thing there that most people are unaware of, and I was completely oblivious to it, was this is the same phone that I had I think at the time, I was walking around having conversations with people as I took my dog, who's unfortunately, he was old, has passed on and gone off to the big doggy sniff in the sky. And this particular phone, I had earpods in, not the Bluetooth ones, but I was walking around and wondering why I was getting tinnitus and other problems, and I couldn't think, and all those other things. And then when I met you, then there was this cascade of understanding, which is another story, really, when we were in Maroochydore at that, you know, the Nest meeting. And I tell a little bit of it in the book of how I think I was catching a plane and I was fried, completely and utterly fried by the EMF in Brisbane. I don't know whether they've changed it. You've probably flown in and out of Brisbane, but Brisbane, you go into one particular hub and you get on a computer, and the thing must be just a microwave oven. But let me ask you a couple of questions, which people are going, well, yeah, I've got a mobile phone. What's the worry? What's the worry? Why care? What's it doing? I talk about it in the book. What's it really doing? I'm okay. I'm fine. I don't have any problems. You know, tell people really what's going on. Why is it important?
The problem is really that people have got so used to the technology that they don't look at what that technology is actually doing. We've got so used to having it, all our functions and apps and our banking and our favorite social media. It's all fed into this device, and then people carry it around all day. But if you step right back and really have a look at what that device is, it's a microwave transmitter. Now, when it was provided a license to be manufactured and handed out to the public globally, and most of those standards were set around 1998, those non-ionizing standards, they actually were looking at very restricted testing. They were only concerned really about type 1 and type 2 tissue heating. Now, that's where the body starts to warm up, and you're seeing that elevated temperature as a result of the microwave energy impacting on the cells. Now, the standards that all the phones basically that are public are carrying around, that standard was put in place around 1998. And even then, you weren't to use it for more than 6 minutes in a row because of the accumulative values were causing damage to the tissue. Now, they still licensed it because at the time, their assumption was that a mobile phone was very expensive and very few people would have the income to use a phone for more than 6 minutes at a time, so it wasn't a problem. Well, we can see that that is absurd, and things have moved on, and people use the phone for hours and hours a day. Our dear colleague Rose Heyman, who is a pain management specialist with me in clinic, when she decided to become somebody who was using the mobile phone and the laptop, she would speak to 6 to 8 hours a day on the mobile phone. And if you remember, she had a lot of hair, and she didn't really like putting earplugs in her ears, so she used to literally put the phone right up under her hair and do that call. It took 3 years for her to die of a brain tumor where the phone was sitting. And she was sitting in front of her favorite toy, which was an Apple laptop Air, which wasn't convenient to plug into an Ethernet cable. It was designed to be all Wi-Fi. And then her apartment was one of dozens of apartments, all stacked on top of each other. And she was surrounded by apartments, every one of them using multiple Wi-Fi outlets. So she was literally sitting in a Wi-Fi oven, so to speak. Now,
Can I
that
just
impacted
interrupt you
on both
there,
our lives.
Cyril? Because you mentioned a couple of things that some people won't understand. That one of them is non-ionizing radiation, and that's important. But you know, we'll talk about Wi-Fi, and we'll also talk about Ethernet. I mean, there are lots of people who don't even know what Ethernet is. So we need to just have a little conversation about that. Shall I explain it, or do you want to explain it? Or
Look, let me go through what typically we talk to clients about, because that's really probably the best thing for people to understand. Because if I break down what we talk about in a conversation with a client, I mean, we get paid to go and do consults for people. I mean, we use over $100,000 worth of test equipment. We test all the way through to 60 gigahertz. All our equipment is ISO 17025, which means it's globally calibrated and traceable and recognized. The results are legal fact. They can be used in court. If you don't have equipment like that, you can't really comment on what the level of EMF is in people's homes. And unfortunately, there's a lot of toys out there that maybe even a couple of $1,000s that aren't really up to the specs of doing real testing. And so we actually bring that to the table. We actually make sure that all the test equipment is as it should be, and providing the right type of information and the right logging of information. We don't provide just a momentary, what is the value now? We do testing periods where we have hundreds, if not thousands, of data points, so we know exactly what's happening in that space, and it's not just a random value of vehicles going by or things of this nature. If I explain what we tend to talk to people about, that would really, I think, make it so much easier for your clients and the viewer, because the viewer knows that there are issues, but they don't know how to get around them. Okay, your mobile phone, if you put it next to your head, within 6 minutes, you're starting to heat the tissue, and the standards were in place to try and make sure the devices didn't produce too much energy, but the frequencies and the characteristics of those frequencies, as in the amount of data on those, video and things of this nature, they weren't even in the trials in 1998 when they set the non-ionizing standards up. So we're using completely different devices to what we'll use then, and the standards really haven't changed at all. You'll notice they do put updates and they say, oh, it's now the 2021 or 2023 standard, but actually within the study there's very little difference, which means it's more, unfortunately, window dressing. So your mobile phone, inside there's a set of documents actually in the document, in the phone, that are hidden, very, very hard to find, but in there it actually tells you not to use it for more than 6 minutes, an accumulative value of 30 minutes in a 7-day week. Well, of course, people use it for more than that before they have breakfast the first day of the week. Which
yes, but they're saying they're not on the phone. They're not got it up to here. So that's not relevant. They might be searching on Facebook first thing in the morning before they get out of bed, which a lot of people do. You know, so they're going, oh, it's not the same, is it? And I'm sorry to say this to you, but that's how people talk. When they talk to me about, oh, it's not the same, is it? You know, you just go, oh, slap them around the face. It is. It's worse, because what they're unaware of is they're channeling into microwave energy, which is sitting right next door to themselves, right next door to their stomach, right next door to their hearts. It's true, isn't it? I'm getting really passionate about this because it buggered me around until it was meeting you that just suddenly went, oh, this is not good. I want to say one other thing. Just while I'm here, the difference between ionizing radiation and non-ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation comes from radiation that we would consider out of a nuclear energy plant. Okay, that's just very quick and simple. Non-ionizing radiation is, well, maybe I'll let you explain that. What's the difference? Because this kills cells, it kills bodies, it kills everything. So what's the difference? What's this non-ionizing radiation that people talk about? Let's cover that and then go back to this usage of a phone first thing in the morning, and all that important information.
Okay, Richard. Right. Non-ionizing radiation. Non-ionizing radiation is the category of energy that you'll find in all your domestic devices, even your microwave oven, okay, because they all interact within certain parameters of energy. When you go beyond that, then you're into ionizing radiation, which actually does direct damage to the body, and you use Geiger counters and other test equipment. You could talk the science, you could speak all night on it, right? But basically, one is very toxic, you don't want to go near it. The other one, unfortunately, is considered less toxic, and we bring it into our homes. Now, that literally covers every device that you think of wirelessly in your home. Doesn't matter if it's iPods, doesn't matter if it's your Wi-Fi system. It doesn't matter if it's pages. All those non-plugged in devices are all non-ionizing, including the microwave oven. Okay. Now, you wouldn't want to stick your head in the microwave oven, right? Because of the amount of energy it produces, it literally cooks flesh. And that, unfortunately, is a very similar frequency to what your mobile phone operates on, but it is much higher energy. We often do tests in people's homes where we'll sit them in their kitchen and take a glass of water, put it in the microwave and turn it on. I run away at this point and I let them hold the meter. And they might be even 6, 8 meters from the microwave, and yet the meter just goes click, click, click all the way to the top. Because microwaves are not that good at holding the energy in. They do hold a lot of it in, but if you start with a lot of energy and you let a little bit out, unfortunately, you're still letting that energy out. It's attenuated, not blocked. So you are still providing the type of values and more that we would see from a mobile phone. There's a whole complicated thing about microwave ovens. You don't want to put your food in there and you don't want to eat it. But there's a whole problem there alone with that one element. Now, let's be practical, right? Because we're only going to talk for an hour or so, right? And people want to know what they can do with that device, that mobile phone. Well, I'll give you a number, okay? It's 12, right? 12 microwatts per meter squared. If I take my mobile phone and put it next to my head, it's 12 microwatts per meter squared on an Apple 6 Plus, if I remember I was doing the testing on. Now, if I take that same mobile phone and I reach out and I put it on the table at arm's length, the exposure rate to my head and my body, where I'm sitting right now, is 0.007. Now, you don't need to understand exposure and microwatts per centimeter squared or anything. You know the difference between 12 and 0.007. It's a lot. So let's say that is good for you. The fact that you've reduced the exposure and all you've done is reach out and put it at arm's length. Okay. That's a good starting point. Okay. The phone will still ring, the phone will still be usable, but I recommend when you start interacting with it, why don't you use the speaker and put it, at that same distance. You'll have a perfectly fine conversation, but you won't be bringing it close to your body. Now, within those legislations that are buried within the phone, it also says how far away from the body the phone should be. And most of the time, they're about 20 to 24 millimeters. If you put your phone in your pocket, it's not 24 millimeters away, is it? It's literally maybe 3, maybe less. And yet they tell you not to carry the phone or store the phone or hold the phone near the body, even when you're not talking on it, because it's continuously talking to the network and pinging things in and out. And it's a source of this energy. Okay. So again, worth thinking about where you put it in the car, for example. If you're driving, you don't want it in your pocket, maybe put it in the dashboard or put it over to the side. If you can get that arm's length, of course, you get back to 0.007, which is a better value than in your pocket, or certainly don't put it in your top pocket next to your heart, anywhere like that. That's just not what you want to do. Okay.
Well, for
There
women,
are,
they'll often hold it in their breast, don't they? And we've seen cancers that are just right next door to where these women are putting their mobile phones in their breasts and holding them there. I mean, how close can we get? Anyway, I digress. Carry on. So.
yeah, one of the other issues with mobile phones is people buy Faraday bags and cases and covers and think that's protecting them. Unfortunately, it's not. What happens is when you partially encompass the phone, it can't find the network so easily. It thinks it's in a further away from the tower, so it ramps the power up to 100%. And unfortunately, you might not feel as much warming right next to it, but your hand's holding it. It's now transmitting full power, and unfortunately, calcium toxicity poisoning, which is the broad name for what microwaves and RF do, which cause inflammation, etc. That's systemic. That's all the way through the body. So you're just because you got your hand on it, your whole body's picking it up. Right. So most of the time you're better off not putting it in one of those cases. And the only reason you'd have a Faraday bag for a mobile phone is if you've turned it off. You turn it off and put it in the bag. Now the ping that it puts out every few seconds to give away your position, even when it's off, isn't so easily read by the network because you put it in a Faraday bag. But if you've put a phone in a Faraday bag that's actually still on or trying to communicate, all it does is ramp up the power again. And if it's a really good Faraday bag, it might not see the network, so it'll just run the battery absolutely flat. It's not what you intended. So
Can we just talk about that? Because I think people are unaware, but your mobile phone, which this is my old one, iPhone 6, second one, S. But this thing, and people are unaware that although it's in airplane mode, okay, I think people can just about see that.
It's still transmitting every few seconds. It's still transmitting every few seconds.
Yeah, and what it's doing is it's saying I'm actually here where I am. So you're still getting a hit off of that. So keep it away from you. I do. I don't like the thing on because even if it is on and just got basic telephone and text, which is on this, just so people can see it. If I take this off, this is on the Apple. I think the Androids are slightly. Now it's just a normal text, and then I could put it onto data there where it's green. Now it's receiving data. Now I believe also data, and I've measured it, is continuously sending information. Now look, it's picking up. You can hear it pinging there, can't you? Gee, WhatsApp notifications. Anyway, there we are. I'll switch the thing off, but. And people are unaware of this, that really the technology is, look, it's still going. The technology,
it's a tracking device, Rich. Yeah, that's its role. It's designed to track where you are and what you're doing and your views and what you're putting onto the social media. And I think people have woken up to what's really going on there. But how to avoid the exposure levels? Well, look, I tell a lot of people, just change your phone message. This will free up your day an awful lot, right? Hi, this is me. I check my phone 10 times a day. Leave a message and I'll be glad to speak to you when I'm free. And then turn it off. And then deal with it in a few hours, turn it on, manage the communications, and then turn it off again. And in between, you haven't been hanging onto your phone all day going, is somebody calling? Do I need to check? You'll get a lot more done. And when you do check it, you're focused. It's not interrupting you in the middle of the day doing something else. It actually is you, the notepad. You answer the calls, you deal with these things, and then you shut it back down again, reducing your exposure. Okay. Now, all the apps that are on your phone, almost all of them are available on your laptop. And now, if you've got it on your laptop, you've got a much easier process of, instead of using Wi-Fi, which is the wireless transmission, through that router, you can still get communications to your laptop by using an Ethernet cable. Now, if you've got a slick, very thin line laptop or PC that doesn't have the connector, which an RJ45 connector, which is the Ethernet connector, you can get an adapter that will put in a C or a USB connection between the USB, should I say, the laptop connection and the Ethernet. So you can get an adapter to do it. A lot of clients we have, we help them arrange to hardwire their house. So they have a hub where their router is located under the stairs or somewhere like that. And on there, there's normally a button that you can press to turn the Wi-Fi off. This does not
Not in North America. You can't turn it off in North America. In France, we have a button where you can turn off the Wi-Fi, which we do. But people are unaware. You actually have to go into the router and switch it off in the software, and then you have to go around it with a meter to say, yes, it's genuinely, completely and utterly off, because we've had people, and you've spoken about people, where they've done that and you still go down with a meter, but it isn't off. It's just not broadcasting, but it's not off. It's still shoving microwave radiation throughout the whole of the house. Anyway, I digress. But
yeah, look, if I explain what's really happening there, and we have that occasionally here in Australia, but it's not an absolute blanket that you can't turn them off. Okay, the older ones, or even today, they're issuing them where you can press the button and turn them off. Otherwise, you have to plug your laptop in, plug the Ethernet cable in, go into the settings of the router, and then choose to turn it off. And keep an eye out for public services in there, because a lot of the routers are doing what you've just described, where you turn off your service, but your router is being used by the telecom company for public access. So yeah, you need to run a little test on that, or understand what services your provider is trying to hijack through your router, and then turn those off as well. And that involves a little bit of investigation, unfortunately, with each router. But look, we could talk about telephones and routers all day. And the thing is, a lot of people think that that's the issue, okay? And if they take the phone and leave it in the kitchen, or use it as an alarm clock and put it on airplane mode, they think they've solved their EMF issue, and they haven't. At the moment, maybe they don't understand. Let's explain. When you go to bed at night, right, there's very often a general purpose outlet, a power socket, either side of your head bed in your bedroom, right? That you use it to plug in a bedside lamp, for example. And the cabling travels from one side to the other in the wall behind your bed. And it also travels all the way around your room. It's probably in the cavities of the wall. We get to measure that frequency. Now, it's not RF, it's not radio frequency, it's electric field still, though. And I better clarify, your mobile phone produces electric field. The telecom companies produce electric fields from the towers. A microwave oven is an electric field. All of these things are an electric field. We just categorize them as, if it's HF, low frequency, high frequency, microwave, it's all electric field. There's a subcomponent called magnetic fields, and it's a resultant force. So let's talk about the electric field first, and then I can talk about the magnetics afterwards. So the electric field in the bedrooms is probably the most damaging thing I'm seeing in people's health, because they don't realize what it's doing. It's literally messing with the lymphatic system, the hormonal systems, that's the circadian rhythm. It's producing what the body sees as light in the bedroom. Now, you don't see this light with your eyes, because the frequency range of the electric field that you see with your eyes is referred to as the visible light spectrum. But did you know light is an electric field? Okay, your body's designed to pick up electric fields through the skin, through the eyes, through all these different sensory systems. So when you turn your light out by turning the switch off, you think you're in the dark, but your body doesn't think it's in the dark, because it sees the electric field in the walls. We get to read these about 4 meters into the bedroom. That's like 12 feet. So unless you've got a huge bedroom, there is nowhere in the middle where you can get away from this electric field. Now, that low frequency electric field does impact the health, maintains inflammatory conditions, and is really messing with people's sleep, not just the mobile phone. Because if we shut down that electric field, we see huge changes in people's sleep, the circadian rhythm, they get REM sleep. I've had clients ring me up having turned off the entire power in the house, and they've gone to sleep and they've woken up the following day and they've had the most incredible dreams of trolls and dragons and all sorts, and they think they've had monsters in the house, but really what they're happening is the brain is detoxing. They're literally dreaming, and they've never had dreaming because they spent their whole lives sleeping in bedrooms with electric fields. And we get lots of clients say, oh no, I always dream, not a problem. And they go home and they turn the power off and they can't believe what they weren't getting before. It's amazing. So now, how, like turning the power off, that's convenient to some people, but unfortunately, we have refrigerators, we have other people in the house or the building, and we don't have access to all the power switches, whatever it might be. Or you might isolate one room. And this is something I see a lot of building biologists and people do, and they do it really badly, right? They'll turn off a bedroom with a switch at the wall, but they won't deal with the rooms either side, upstairs, downstairs, because they say the power sockets and all that are off. Except, as I said earlier, we can read it from about 4 meters away. So if you're lying in bed and you just turn off the switches in that room and the lighting in that room, the rooms around and above and below radiate that energy into your room. So it has to be tested properly, not just looking at the switch and going, yeah, there's no power at that socket. So that's something that really needs to be looked at and done properly. I literally have been to maybe 30 houses where they've paid eco homes people to do that because they heard it was a good idea, spend a lot of time putting those switches in, and every single one of them was done wrong. So it's a problem because it just goes on and on. So I'm quite passionate about people doing these things properly. Now, an easier way is, instead of turning the power off, if you shield the walls or sleep inside a canopy, because those canopies are able to pull the electric field in a way that stops it from traveling through and going into the body. Painting the walls of a house inside a bedroom can be highly effective because that literally stops the outside signals, that's radio frequencies from towers, telecom, neighboring Wi-Fi. It attenuates all of that, and it attenuates the electric field that's in the walls of the bedroom, and the ceiling. If you obviously do the ceiling, we very often will paint the floor of a bedroom or put down other materials that are suitable depending on what flooring somebody has. Now, we actually have a form on our website. People fill it in. It's a free what do you call it, quotation form. They just fill it in. We run the numbers as dimensions of a room, window frames, window panes. We put that through a software program I wrote, and that then tells us exactly how much shielding material, grounding materials, and primer, everything in square meters. So the client gets a package with everything to shield their bedroom. We look at the windows, and we either provide fabrics that are shielding fabrics, or we provide foil that can go on the wall. And I don't mean foil you'd wrap a turkey up in. I mean like window film that looks like a tint. So you get a thermal improvement as well as blocking that hole in the wall, and you create yourself literally a Faraday cage, but it doesn't look like a chicken run. It looks like your bedroom. Now that's one way of dealing with it.
Well, can I just interject there, because some of these things that you talk about, I know what they are, but other people might say, "What's a Faraday cage?" And what do you mean, shielding my room? What's all this in canopies? I'll just quickly say this. It's basically a canopy that you put over your bed, a bit like a mosquito net, but you also have to have a bottom as well. And it creates a cage where the electrical fields from also radio, the normal 99 point whatever that you get on your car is actually an electrical field. Your electromagnetic fields from the towers, like you talked about the microwave, all of that, the magnetic fields coming off of the wiring, all of that stuff is all going on, and it basically stops that from entering into this cage, which means then your body, it does this, it goes, ah, I can rest. And that is absolutely key. You talked about REM sleep. You also talked to there's delta, which is not the dreaming stage, which the body needs to go into in order to heal. Okay, we need to understand that in order to detoxify REM, but also then to go and do its healing. If it's not going into delta, it doesn't complete its healing. So it's continuously running around on a treadmill going, oh, oh. It might slow down a bit, but it's basically you want to get the monkey brain, the brain off the treadmill. And so it can just go into its house and go, oh, and actually repair. It's basically it. So that's what a Faraday cage is, and I think I've explained some of the other things for people that sort of not aware of what's going on. Over to you, Cyril.
Absolutely right. You're quite correct. What happens is people finally get sleep in a way that they just can't believe, and that makes a massive difference. And we focus on the bedroom because you don't want to walk around town wrapped in tin foil. It's not going to help you. It's the way society is at the moment. We absorb these toxins all day and we detox them at night if you're in a space with no electric field. It's as simple as that. So people say to us, oh, I need something for all day. Well, no, you don't. What you need is to detox every night, and then you can cope with where you're at right now. That tends to be what we're finding. We've had people who are seen as absolutely extreme electro-hypersensitive, and they still end up in a situation where they can sleep in a bedroom that's a Faraday cage, perfectly normal life, because they were detoxing finally each night. And sometimes it takes a few months to get to that state. But if you sleep in a space that's detoxing, you'll be able to cope day to day. That's what we're seeing generally. And that's like a real summary of where it is. Now, there's a few things that people really need to understand if they're assessing their own home. Current as in solar inverters, junction boxes, meter boxes. Anywhere within a few meters of those boxes, there is a magnetic field as well as the electric field. And here in Australia, we seem to have some diabolical standards where they put them right behind the headboard. In so many houses, it's quite mad. Now, we tend to try and avoid that, move the bed 90 degrees, things like that. But there is another way as well, and that's to actually shield the magnetics. And we do that with cobalt laminate. Okay, we import that to Australia. As far as I'm aware, the only people in Australia who provide cobalt laminate. And we actually then tailor that and install it or have it installed for areas such as around a meter box or even underground cabling. We're doing a job at the moment where there's underground cabling that was put right at the base of the house, and the first two layers of bedrooms you can't use because you've got significant magnetic fields going right through the concrete block, right through the walls and into those two bedrooms. And they thought they'd bought a great house because they looked up and they said, well, there's no overhead power cables, we must be fine. And in fact, it was worse than that. So now they're digging up that underground supply, which runs across the front of their house, and we're going to wrap it in cobalt and then bury it again. That way we can attenuate the magnetic fields properly. So there are solutions, but you do need a bit of an engineering support. But we do that. Behaviors are one of the big things. When people walk in and around their house and they're constantly referring to their mobile phone for Facebook or their laptop for or should I say iPads and things like that, wireless devices, by the use of those items, they're continuously topping up this toxic state all day. So they have to get around the idea of changing their behaviors. We've put basically a laptop station in the house. So if we want to check something or we want to do social media, we go to that station, it's plugged in, we've got a laptop, we just deal with it, have a look, and then we get out of that space and get on with our normal evening. So we're changing behaviors. Yeah, that's basically a real summary of what we do and how we do it. But yeah, getting in a space with no energy, that helps the body heal. That really is what people should aim for.
Can we talk about some examples? Because we've had mutual friends that are no longer here. We talked about the lovely Rose Heyman, which is how I met you. We met at a conference in Dusseldorf, and we had a lot of fun. And then it went all a bit sour. But that's another story, and really nothing for this or any of the How Can I Heal podcasts. But it was really fascinating how you talked about this brain tumor and all of those types of things, and the fact that she was surrounded by aerials basically transmitting, not even 5G. And you talked also earlier about 5G gave us a real ramp up because people suddenly became aware of this technology. I don't want to go into all of that because we could talk. Well, you could do a whole week-long training on this, but that's not going to help people. Really, the key thing is just some examples of the differences and how. And I was electromagnetically sensitive. There's no doubt about it. We actually moved from Canada, where there were towers being filled up with 5G things. We're right next door to a highway, a motorway, kilometer or so, and they were just putting up more and more of these. My brain stopped functioning. I had mercury fillings in which I had to have removed because I had radio stations going through my head. I could hear them. So I was picking up that. It was almost impossible to shield the room because I was next door. I was living in a wooden house, and the next door neighbor, I always joke, must have had a little wiener or something, because he had an enormous Wi-Fi router with multiple aerials in it because he loves sport. No, not a problem. But it was a joke, really, that I'm saying. And I just could not get away from the microwave radiation. And so that, I didn't have those horrible, the kids are walking around with ear pods, which have got Bluetooth in them, just firing that stuff all day long into their brains. It's a bit like smoking, isn't it? These cigarettes, it accumulates over the time, and you're just causing more and more and more underlying damage to the structured water, which, as I talk about in the book. Let's talk about some examples. People, you've talked about, say, the solar panels on. You talked about one lady. I don't know whether you can talk about that, but I'm sure you can tell me. Solar panels on top.
Yeah, look, solar is a particular a favorite of mine at the moment. Not a lot of people realize that the Defense Department in America, they created dirty power as a weapon to actually poison over the power lines. So it was supposed to be used on targeting, let's say, embassies and people of interest. Okay. And they developed it, and it ended up to be around 20 kilohertz, 20 kilohertz signal, high amplitude, overlaid over the 50 and 60 power lines, so 50 and 60 hertz. So it was actually.
So this is let's just explain that. When you get your normal power coming through your into your house, that's 50 to 60 hertz. That means every second it's going.
Depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah, and 20,000 kilohertz that's 20,000 times that, and that we can actually see. And maybe I'll put up a picture of a lovely sine wave, which the body can just about handle if it's regular. But then you put that on top. I describe this as this. let's say that you love Mozart and you can listen to Mozart. It's got this lovely sort of Baroque sound, and then you put on top of it thrash metal. So you've got do 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 do, lovely Mozart all at the same time. Imagine that both at the same time. That's what's basically happening to your cells. They're listening to thrash metal and overlaid with Mozart. Maybe there's an algorithm we could show that. I don't know. Over to you, Cyril. Sorry about that, but I
Yeah,
just think people don't get all of that technology.
yeah, that's a known technology that has been out there for decades. That they overlay. They've obviously gone a lot further, and they use other weapons now in addition. But that was a starting point of understanding dirty power. Now, dirty power was used to hurt and damage people. Now, when we had the use of voltage controllers, inverters, things of this nature, the semiconductor revolution in our domestic equipment, we started producing dirty power from all our devices, and they accumulate into the walls, and you actually see it on an oscilloscope. So it's something I do. I actually do testing and show an oscilloscope and actually show the dirty power. Well, I've been doing some investigation, and here in Australia, without exception, every single solar inverter is producing colossal amounts of dirty power. In fact, it's become a bit of a running joke. And you know what frequency the predominant frequency is? Go on, guess.
2.4 gigahertz.
No, I've already given it to you. You're not listening.
20,000.
It's 20 kilohertz.
20 gigahertz.
20 kilohertz is being injected into solar inverters in Australia, and I suspect it's happening all around the world. So they're using what was a known poison, and they're hiding it on the 50 hertz and the 60 hertz supply. Now, there are companies out there providing filters for that, and I started using those, but I found the levels of dirty power have got to such a level you can't use plugins and actually achieve what you need to. Now, there are a couple of companies around the world that say they produce what's known as a whole house filter. So I bought them because I wanted to find the solution. And you know what? They don't work the way they're supposed to. They don't work to get rid of dirty power in a way that is effective. And they leave way too much dirty power in the houses. It's a design problem. It's an engineering problem, and we need an engineering solution. So having tested these products that people say do the job, I actually went out and I spent 4 years of my life designing it. Now, you remember I was an IBM engineer, and basically specializing in both robotics and heavy industrial power, right? So I literally had a bit of fun, and I built some filters, and then I designed some, and then I went to see a major filtration company and showed them their dirty power, who produce filters for the railways and people like that. I went into their factory and their design area, and I said, look, can I show you this? And I showed them their power, and all their jaws dropped and said, oh no, there must be a fault, there must be a problem. And bit by bit, I showed them that their solar system on their roof that they're running the factory from was inducing this very bad 20 kilohertz signal. So they shut the whole factory down and then started looking at the power coming in from the neighboring buildings and factories. And you know what? It was exactly the same. And then they said, don't worry, we'll have it fixed by the weekend. And here we are 4 years later, and we have a working prototype, and we're going into production next year. So I've finally built a real filter that actually does the job properly. And it's unlike any other filter that's available to the public. It actually gets rid of that rubbish properly. And it carries the whole load of the house. It's not just a plug-in. It actually intercepts all the power entering the house, whether it's grid, whether it's solar, whether it's generator. It literally is kitted up to do the whole lot. And that is the solution for dirty power. So we've designed it, we've built it, and we're going into production. So that is a good story. That's one that we know is going to make a big difference in that area. So dirty power is totally underestimated because it is an aggression. It is that that thrash metal on the nervous system. And most people don't know how to operate an oscilloscope. Even most engineers don't. So the number of times I've had to show them how to see it, it's quite amusing. In fact, I was presenting at a local show. It was an off-grid show where they had a lot of companies who had battery banks and inverters that they were fitting to tiny homes. And one of them came up, one of the sales managers, and said, "I'd really like to promote your work. Could you test ours here at the show how clean it is, because they all market them as pure sine wave." And I promise you, that is a marketing story. They are not pure sine wave. It is wrong, and to be honest, is a lie. As soon as I plugged my oscilloscope in and showed him, I think by the following morning he'd resigned from that business, because
Gosh.
he had been selling it as a pure sine wave, promising people it was a pure sine wave and it was perfectly fine for you. And I proved that every single company selling what was a pure sine wave at that show, they were all selling filthy, dirty electricity. And it's people like me who are a real nuisance to them.
Yeah.
I was able to show them, right? So
But I
uh,
think that the key thing for people watching this is, there's another factor to this. Your car, your electric car. Wow, this thing, it's all supposed to be, oh, super clean energy, absolutely fine for you, no problems for, it's not
let
affecting
me
you at all. Go on, let's
let
talk.
me explain. Let me explain. I've tested, and you and I have a friend who died, who had a beautiful Tesla S, but he also had all the battery banks on the wall. He also had a fully wired, I should have said, a fully wireless house. It was a smart house as best as anybody would have. And he literally was basking in electric fields until the day he died, at 49, if I remember, tragically. And we did tell him, and he worked on his mind. He was very well up on German new medicine and energy clearing, but he didn't take, excuse me, EMF seriously, and that electric field eventually wore his immune system down to the point he couldn't cope, and it killed him. Now, cars. Okay, at first I thought, yeah, there would be a problem with the electric cars, okay? But I went and started testing them. And then do you know what I did? I started testing regular cars, petrol cars, and I found colossal magnetic fields in regular cars. You know why? Because normally you've got, if it's a rear wheel vehicle, you've got the gearbox between the front passengers, okay? And here in Australia, we drive a lot of four-wheel drives with that orientation. And there is a big iron gearbox with iron components, and they're all magnetic. And when you start moving that vehicle, they become a dynamic, they become a pulsating magnetic field which consumes the whole internal of that car. And this is why people get tired when they're driving. They get exhausted, because it's not just the gearbox and the mechanics in front producing a rotating magnetic field, which is seen as a pulsating field, the same as you'd see from other sources. But have you ever thought about the radial tires of your car?
Yeah, I
Well,
have.
we've got all that wire, all that iron, and it's magnetic. Okay, when it's spinning, it produces four positions in the car, all radiating magnetics. So this produces a polarity shift. It messes with the big field aligners of the body. You're very aware of all that energy and how it can get distorted and the outcomes of it. Well, that is seen in your domestic basic petrol car or diesel car. So we didn't need to go to electric cars to see problems. We've already got it in our current cars, but we've been ignoring it. Okay, so let's not use the electric car as a scapegoat. You get exhausted, tired, and driver fatigue in a basic car, and we now know why. because of all those fields. And people make it worse by putting in Bluetooth to use their phone to listen to stuff, etc. You know, we really did have benefits when we had CDs and tapes and things, but if you can turn your Bluetooth off in your car, that can make a big difference, because that radiation really does impact you as well. But the all these electric cars, to be honest, I haven't found them as bad as people make out. The worst I found was a very small electric car, because everything was close in, and there was nowhere to hide. Some of the big cars, I am reading between about 40 and 80 milligauss under the dashboard, you know, and your feet are sitting in there. But the driver's footwell and that position, actually the values were very similar or even less than a lot of four-wheel drives that had all that mechanical pulsation. There's a lot of electrics in there, but most of them are quite well shielded as well in that area. There's very little coming through. You still get the driver fatigue, but it's they weren't the evil that people were making out. Okay, so just be aware, if you've got a bigger car, you've got more space and you're further away from those energy points that are in the corners of the car in front. The smaller the electric car, the closer you are to that electric field and the magnetic fields that occur. So be aware when you're buying one, those factors.
But surely the motors are creating an enormous field around them. I mean, they're not shielded,
No,
are they?
actually, no, they're not. They are a high field, but they're not enormous, right? They've really worked very hard at capturing the field there. So I literally got to get under the dashboard. I've got to get right under forward to see that. So don't vilify the electric cars. Most of the manufacturers have tried really hard. Very few people have gone out and tested the standard mechanical cars. I did, and I found that they were causing similar issues.
Oh, that's
Right,
interesting.
but
I didn't know that. But there isn't. What about the batteries? I mean, you've got a battery which is full electrical field going all the way through that as well. And you know
um,
that.
it's actually not. It's not the current. When you separate the current into the cables, that's where you're seeing the issue. It's the terminations. That's where it is, and the dynamic force of the motor torque in those areas. And they have put them, you know, out in each wheel and out away. The battery is more of an issue if you poke a hole in it or bump it with the particular chemistry set. So, look, I'm not defending the cars. I'm just saying that they weren't as bad as everybody was making them out to be. But
There is
the
one fact.
bedroom,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
people's
really the
beds
key.
are worse. Worse. Bedrooms are worse.
That's really fascinating, and I think that we ought to come to a conclusion here because the recording will go on for too long. Like I said, we could spend days talking about this, and we really, literally could. In conclusion, really, like you said, we live in very electrified places. We didn't even talk about Elon Musky rat upstairs, did he? And the other people putting up satellites, which is again another huge area. But we live in this area now, this age where we are being bombarded left, right, center, front, back, top, bottom by electrical fields. You can't even walk outside in certain places in North America outside your house and bare feet and get true grounding anymore because they feed the negative earth, not the negative, straight into the ground. In other countries, they don't do that. That's another story for another day. But the key point.
There is something important to understand about that. Lots of people think grounding in your bedroom is a good idea, right? It is. Grounding is a good idea. Get your clothes off, roll around in the river, right? That's grounding. If you lay a conductive sheet on your bed in a bedroom with electric fields, and you plug it into the earthing circuit, you are now drawing the electric field from the wall into your body. It takes 16 microamps to start carcinogenic tissue activity. And most of the time we see more than 2000 microamps through the body when people plug into an earthing circuit. So you don't want to do that. The people, I actually rang the Australian people that sell them and I said, do you understand what you're doing? And they said, no. How can we be so wrong? We sell so many. You see the problem,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
a crying shame. It's just the devil is in the detail, unfortunately.
yeah,
So really, let's come back to the biggest solution that people can make. Their sanctuary is their bedroom. So what
yeah,
you've got to do is, I'm going to make it very simple. You could buy canopies. You have a solution there. I know you do. They are expensive. You're talking about a couple of $1,000 for the proper one with the bottom sheet. But if you're suffering from a disease and you aren't getting well, sometimes this is what you've got to do. Other simple solutions are, and you really, that's a really good, quick solution that will help you. So that's one, your bedroom. Absolute must. Get rid of all the electrics in the bedroom. If you're living in an apartment, you've got to have one of those if you're not well, because this is just a fantastic, quick, costly, but working solution. And you really do need to have it tested as well, because you actually have to have a proper Faraday cage. Some people may have more money and they can go off and paint the walls, which is very challenging as well. It's a lot of extra work, can cost up to about $10,000, across the board, sometimes less. But if you're like me, I spent an absolute fortune changing my environment, which is the number 4 stage, to move away from the almost an impossible situation where I just had to leave, come to rural France, where they've just put a new tower up. I'm pointing to where it is over there. I can measure it. I know it's going on, but I'm not affected as badly as I was. We switch off the electricity at night. I'm thinking possibly of shielding the room in future years, because it's just going to get worse with Muskie Rat and all his other cronies putting up more and more of these satellites into space, which I think they'll overfill space eventually. Maybe through the Kessler effect, they'll all implode in on each other and all disappear. We'll see. That's another story for another day. So I think the key is, if you can get your sanctuary, your place, get these away from your body, move your head and your body away from, at least from the wiring behind you and certainly underneath you. We don't have it. We switch off the electricity at night apart from the fridge. And I actually switch it off at the board, so I know it's not going through the rest of the system. It's part of a solution. I know it isn't the overall thing, but our sanctuary, our place where we sleep is fantastic. My wife went away recently and she was in hotel rooms and she was at other places. One particular place is just fully electrified as well. And she said, I couldn't wait to get home to sleep. And she was only away a week. So it just gives you an idea of how intense those things are. And she's not sensitive like I was. So she really notices the difference in sleep when she's here. And I think that's the key thing, the thing that people can do immediately. Put these things well away from you if you're using them. Kill your Wi-Fi router, because that's just continuously going on and on and on. And plug in your mobile in your phone. If you can't do that, at least switch the thing off at night. Get rid of all the Wi-Fi, all electrical devices away from your bedroom, period. So no TV, unplug it if you happen to use it. Switch these off and put them in another room. Don't use them as an alarm clock. Just deal with all that stuff. Switch off the electrics if you can in your room. If you're in an apartment, that's slightly different. So these are just some basic, simple solutions. And unfortunately, you don't have a choice anymore. If you're suffering with a disease, if you're not, then it'll take a little bit of time because it's accumulative. We know that now, which you talked about this calcium dump of calcium going into the cell, and it'll only accumulate. And I'm sorry to tell you, I was an early user of mobile phones, and it accumulated, and eventually I had to do something about it. That's really anything else to add to that, Cyril?
Yeah, look, you might be frightening people when it comes to shielding rooms. Look, there are some companies around the world who are charging absolute fortunes, and that's immoral, but that's what's happening some places. We don't, and most of our, like, you can totally install a whole bedroom of a typical size for around $3,000. And that means when you walk into that bedroom and shut the door, it's shielded to the point that you're going to sleep well, your body's going to rest, and that tends to be suitable for someone who owns the home. They don't plan to be moving. They're basically ready to settle down in that space. We get a lot of parents who might shield their bedroom, but then they give their kids Faraday canopies. They do that so when the kids go to university or college or they leave home, they take the canopy with them, so that the kids get the best education by being able to sleep, being able to detox, being able to stay awake in their classes and keep concentration. So people are educating their families to make the best of it. And there are a whole range of canopies. You can buy very cheap ones I say cheap, like $1,000 on eBay. And unfortunately, I've gone to people's homes where they meet me at the front door with a plastic bag of crumbling rubbish, and that is a year-old Faraday bag from eBay, or Faraday canopy. Our ones, my wife and I slept in ours for about 2.5 years before we started shielding our home. And one of our clients wanted to buy that office, and we did all the testing and we ran it through because the good quality ones are machine washable and things. And we did a whole set of tests. It was absolutely perfect. It was the same attenuation as it was the day we bought it. So we were happy to pass that on to our client. So there are big differences in quality. So please be aware of that. Then also don't be frightened of shielding your own bedroom, because you can do it. It's not complicated. And people like myself are here to guide people through that process. It makes such a change to your life. It's hard to describe. Dietrich Klinghardt, the famous doctor, he actually said that it's very clear with his clients, those that do deal with their EMF and shield and take it seriously, they recover. And those that don't take it seriously don't. That's literally what he said. But be aware also that there's a lot of devices that are being sold that flash LEDs or sit in the corner, a coil of copper or a nice little pyramid, that are all supposed to resolve your EMF, little trinkets that you hang around your neck.
I don't think it's on the back of this, is it? I mean, you can get those things that go on the back of mobile phones,
Yeah,
I suppose, and the crystals and stuff that you hold. Be honest with people.
they don't work. They don't work. I'm sorry. We've tested and tested and tested. They do not impact on the electric field. Now, there's other tests people can do, and that's not live blood analysis, right? Because you can change live blood analysis with a glass of water or going for a walk, okay? Or even a prayer. You need to do calcium channel gate toxicity testing, okay? If you want to do a controlled trial of that with your device that you say deals with EMF, then please do it, because that is the scientific testing that we can use in court and say, yes, it actually works. Unfortunately, there are lots of companies that make millions of dollars a year selling trinkets, and they won't do any proper testing because it doesn't stand up. And that, unfortunately, is a tragedy, but a reality. So I do warn people about that problem.
Yeah, you know, Cyril, your work is just amazing. People probably don't quite get how amazing it is. They probably, if they've listened to this, they'll realize it. Uh, I'll put links into how that people can contact you, because people will. You know, there are some situations where people can go, "I'm okay right at the moment, but I don't want to get ill," right? But if people are ill with all sorts of things like, I mean, depression, mania, um, anxiety, hormonal issues, heart palpitations. These are all microwave radiation sickness, known sickness symptoms. And or if they're not sleeping, they're not dreaming. Well, they say, "Oh, I don't care about dreaming," but you know, you're not detoxifying. You're not getting well. You're doing all the other things. You may have even cleared all the emotions, as we talked about our friend who did all of that stuff, but then you're still living in a microwave oven full of electricity. The body can't detoxify. It can't heal itself. It can't get that calcium correctly balanced inside the cell. That's basically what, you know, we're talking about calcium. Calcium dump. Basically, the microwave radiation causes a massive calcium dump inside the cell, which causes peroxynitrite, which is I talk about it in the book. Okay, we don't need to go into all of that. That's another story. We'll be here all day.
I've got a really good example for you. I'll give you very quickly. I went to Brisbane. I went to a house there where they had put a transmitter on the roof house opposite. It's an eight unit apartment opposite the house that this lady was living in. She was going crazy, unfortunately, because the values were so high in her house. She couldn't sleep, couldn't concentrate. When I got there, she opened her mouth and put her mobile phone in her mouth to film her massaging her throat, and hundreds of stones of calcium came out of the glands at the back of her throat. And I have it on video. Literally, she sent it to me. Right? She was so poisoned at such a level, it was exuding from the glands in the back of her throat. And her doctor was saying, "I've never seen anything like it. I don't know what it is. And of course, it can't have anything to do with EMF." We shielded her bedroom, and in 3 weeks, all the symptoms had gone away that had plagued her for 6 months. Okay, direct cause and effect, very evident. Now, that's the most extreme I've seen so far of a physical outcome, but everybody, unfortunately, suffers the symptoms in very unique ways. If we all went, you know, green with blue spots, everybody would go, "Oh, that's EMF. Oh, I know what that is." But it doesn't. Everybody has inflammation and disturbance in the body from these poisons in their own unique way. It finds the weaknesses, whether it's early onset of arthritis in the hands or whatever. It's issues of inflammation generally overall, and literally by getting out of that electric field, you can see changes very fast.
And we have all the evidence to prove it. So if people go, "Oh, that's not true," and "Why aren't governments doing anything?" and "Why aren't scientists doing anything?" Scientists are doing things. You just don't hear about it in the media, so you don't know. Also, a lot of this stuff is completely blocked on, you know, not social media. You're not allowed to know about any of it. And even if you do report on it, it's, you know, it's taken off. Then also other things that are going on, like what is it? The World Health Organization, IARC, for example, turned around and said that these are class 2B carcinogenic, you know, causing cancer basically, but they should have been 1A. This is on the same level as lead and mercury poisoning, which is a class 2B. So just get it into your head and understanding on that. And also that was how long ago was that, the IARC thing, that when they did that, and they've redone it, but that whole scientific group was, you know, half if not more than the people were funded by industry, same people that producing these things. It's all being captured, and I think people need to fully understand that these things are dangerous. The wiring going through our system is dangerous. Telecommunications is challenging. It's all, but we can do something about it. So yeah, I may be causing fear, but the solution is there. Okay, we can do something about it. If you want to get well, want to heal yourself, you can do it. Okay, it's possible. You don't have to move to France.
Now, wherever you are in the world, you should be able to find engineers who are shielding, who are measuring in ways that stand up to testing, and you can get advice and support and actually resolve these things in your homes. It should be as simple as that. It is here in Australia. They just contact us and we walk them through what they can do. We don't always have to do testing in their homes if we can be sure of what's happening around the house. Yeah, we're here to help, and I think your book will help people as well when they understand it interlinks with the other areas of dis-ease.
All the links for Cyril are below in the thing, and I'll even come across here, so you can contact him and he'll point you in the right direction. So it's just, we could talk for hours and hours and hours. We just don't have an hours and hours and hours to talk. And of course, there's a time zone thing. Your information is just outstanding, always has been from the time that I met you back in Dusseldorf. I can't remember, 2014 maybe whatever. It's been a long time that we've been good friends. So thank you so much for just sharing your incredible wisdom and knowledge. There we go. Anything else you want to say? Final words?
Be happy.
Yeah, just there's a solution, and that's really what we're about. True.
You're not happy, change things until you are happy.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sil.